Hi, this is Scott with ClaySys. What we'll be showing you with this video is how you can debug, in other words, step through or find problems with the business logic that you have in your ClaySys AppForms. For instance, if you have implemented a number of rules in your form and the result is not what you expected, in other words, the logic seems to be wrong in what you've created, then you have a way in ClaySys AppForms to debug that business logic using a built-in rule debugger. If you've done any work in the past with the InfoPath product, you will know that although you could create very powerful rules in InfoPath, the one thing that you could not do with them was to step through them and debug that business logic. You had to create some type of logic on your own to figure out when they were firing and what the results were and things of that nature. So with ClaySys AppForms, you have the ability to debug that business logic that you implement so that you can see why something might not be working or maybe giving you an unexpected result. So in front of you right now is a small form that I've created that basically is going to hide or show a specific set of fields based upon what is selected in the combo box that we have here called CBX region. Now, this combo box, I'm going to step through the data source wizard so you can see where this data is coming from and what I've selected, is pulling data from a SharePoint list. So you can see here the first screen I've chosen SharePoint. And this is going to get its data. Let me show you that. I should have showed you that first. It's getting its data from a list I have called regions. So if we click next on that, this screen just shows you again that I'm going to be pulling all the data from that list. And in this case, there's only 2 items in that list. But I've done something here that I don't typically do, but this helps show how you can use the debugger. The title field coming from that list is what I'm going to be displaying to you in the combo box. But once a selection is made, what I'm going to be storing from that selection is the region value, another column that I have in my SharePoint list. So for instance, if you choose US, the region value is US. If you choose Europe, the region value is EU. That's simple. So we'll click next on this. I've added a trigger here already that you can see. It just goes and gets this data when the form loads. And I've also added a sort order so it sorts those results by the title field. Very simplistic. Now what I've done is, let me switch over here to the rule tab. Well, before I do, I've color coded these areas just so that you can see visually very easily which one is being displayed. And really the only difference is the labels that I have here. For the US based, we're going to be entering city, state, and zip. And for the Europe based, we're going to be entering city, region, and postal code. So over here in my rule, I have a rule on this drop-down box or combo box that it checks to see if I've selected US or I've selected Europe, and then goes through and appropriately shows or hides those fields. Now, just to take it a little step further so that you know, these fields are actually sitting in a subform control. It's another control that ClaySys has, and that's that control there. So that one is called FRM US, and this one, when I select it, you'll see is called FRM Europe. So those fields and labels are contained within each one of those subforms. Okay, so let's preview this. And you can see that by default, I've hidden both of those forms that contain those controls. So let's go ahead and select US first. And what I should have received back was the yellow field, or the yellow form called FRM US, because you can see this has city, region, and postal code instead of city, state, and zip. If I switch this over to the Europe selection, it is reversed. Now I have the US form instead of the European form. So what's going on here? So logic would dictate that, let's go ahead and take a look and make sure that the rules that I've established, I'm appropriately hiding and showing the forms depending on which value is being selected. So let's close this. Let's switch over to the rule tab. So you can see here, this is my rule called rule show address info. And you can see here on the left-hand side that this is triggered when the selection is made from the drop-down box called CBX region. So each time we make a change, this rule is going to fire. So the first thing we have is a condition, a test. Does the value that I've selected equal US? If it does, we want to set the form US visibility to true and set form Europe to false. So that seems right. if I've selected Europe, which means I should be storing the EU value, I'm setting the Europe form visibility to true and setting the US visibility to false. So this all seems like it's working correctly, or the logic seems to be correct, I should say. Let's test that one more time, make sure that I didn't do anything wrong with my testing process. Let's preview that. So again, I'm going to choose US, and I should be showing the yellow, the US form, but again, instead I'm showing the Europe green form. Let's switch that one more time. And now I'm showing the US form when I've selected Europe. So what is really going wrong here? So this is where the built-in debugging process, or the rule debugger in ClaySys AppForms, can really come in handy for you. So let's take a look at that. Over here on the rule tab again, all you have to do is basically determine where do you want to start debugging your rule. Now in our case it's very simple, so I want to start at the top. So I'm just going to right click and choose Set Debug. And you can see up here how it highlights it in red, indicating that this is in debugging mode. Now the rule debugger will only operate or work when you're previewing the form. In other words, you can't do this once you've deployed this and you're running it on your SharePoint site. It works in preview mode only. So let's go ahead and preview this now. And now let's once again select US. And you can see here that the rule is now broken. I've stopped the process. And you can see my form at the bottom of this screen, in the bottom half of this screen. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the debugger works. Over here on the left-hand side, these are basically breakpoints, or a debug point. You can change where this rule will stop. So for instance, if you have a very large rule and you started initially from the top and you realize that the first 10 or 12 lines of your rule execute fine, you can always reset that by unchecking that and then coming down to some other toggle point. So the next time you run this, everything above that breakpoint or toggle point will run automatically. So that's what those are for. The buttons here, this is to execute the next step in the rule, and this button is to simply run the entire rule. So if you get past the point where it fails or something, or you've seen where the business logic is and you just want to go ahead and complete the rule, you can click that triangle there and that will complete the running of the rule. Alright, so let's go ahead and start stepping through this. So we've broken up here on top, and again that's because we've put our breakpoint up here on the top level of our rule. So if we click the next button, now we're doing our first test. Does the CBX region value equal US? Well, you can see down here it does equal US. So I'm going to go ahead and click next. But wait a second. You can see here it says the result was false, that it did not equal US. And now we're going to go ahead and click next again. CBX region.value equals EU. This should be returning false because it does not equal EU. But instead that's returning true. So this is how you can use the debugger to see exactly what values are being selected in your combo box, or when somebody enters value into a text box, or whatever the choice may be. So because this is saying that it's EU, now we're going to go ahead and set our form Europe style, the visibility to true. You can see that just popped up there. We're going to make sure that US is false if it were already visible. And now we're done with our rules, so we can complete the running of this, and there is the result. So why is it that this is displaying Europe when it should be displaying US? So we've checked the logic in the rule, that all seems correct. So now let's go and check what has been entered in the list. And here, this goes back to why this was so important. Let me step back here for a second before I do that. Remember here on our drop-down box or combo box, let's run through that data source real quick once again. Because the important part of this is this screen right here. Remember I was displaying the title. That's what you saw was the title from that list, but what I'm storing once you make that selection is this column that I have in my list called region value. That's the value member, what we're actually storing. And when you run your rule like that and you're looking at a value from a combo box, it's going to be checking the value member, not what it's showing to you. Okay, so let's close this. Let's go back to my list. And now you can see where I messed up here is my title is US, but I've set the region value to EU. So this is where I've made the mistakes. Let's change this and make this what it should be. And let's also fix Europe and and make that one EU. All right, save. Now let's go back to our form, preview this again. Now we still should be in debug mode because I haven't turned that off yet. So let's go ahead and select US. Our debugger has kicked in. We've broken again at the top level of our rule because that's where we set the initial debug. Just click next. So now as our first test, does the value that I've selected in my combo box region equal US? Remember last time it was false. This time it is true. So now we'll go ahead and correctly set the US form. You can see that there at the bottom to true, the visibility to true. We'll make sure that the Europe form is hidden. Now we're checking our next test. Does it equal EU? And this time that returns false. And now we'll just go ahead and continue with the rest of the rule. So hopefully this will come in handy for you as you are running into potential business logic problems with the rules. Being able to debug the logic that you have and see where the problem lies and why one thing is occurring. What is ClaySys AppForm actually using as its value? You can see that very simplistically by using the debugger in your ClaySys AppForm solutions. I hope you found this video to be beneficial. We are going to be producing more of these how-to type videos in the coming weeks and months, so be sure to check our website often for new demonstrations. You can find all of our videos at http://www.clayssys.com/pages/viewdemo.aspx. If there is a video you would like to see that is currently not on our site, please let us know by sending an email to info@claysys.com, and we will do our best to get one created for you. Again, I hope you found this video to be of benefit, and thank you for using ClaySys AppForms.